think they found me. Good afternoon, everybody. After such a lovely morning. I am Mary McTamaney. I am the oldest person in Newburgh, so I get to be the historian. But what I really am is a child of Downing Park, that I was born along its border on Du Bois Street in 1946, so I entered its pathways as a baby, pushed in my carriage by parents and grandparents, so my eyes and my brain took in all the vistas, large and small, that the park's designers created for me and for all of us. Downing Park was a gift created for lots of noble reasons. Central was the belief that, as this Olmsted network says, parks are for people. My family was working class. Our Du Bois Street apartment was just one bedroom. When I was born and my parents first rented it, they squeezed in baby number 2, and when their third was born, we moved across the street to a larger 2-floor apartment. An open window was the only form of air conditioning back then. The small backyard at 199 Du Bois had to be shared with others, and so we turned naturally to the park. It was there for us. It was just beyond the firehouse, Chapman Steamer, where my father worked. In the 1940s and 50s, South Street terminated at Du Bois Street. That was the geography of Newburgh because the topography was so steep. We are a hillside town. Instead of a through street that we see now, really almost a highway, a winding footpath climbed up and over the hill there with wide granite steps set within a masterpiece of a switchback stone wall trimmed by bronze rails and ornate lanterns. It led visitors coming from the east through a series of landscaped paths and up to resting places that Messrs. Olmsted and Vaux created. A wide terrace, city terrace, both a through street in those days and a carved out plateau with benches that overlooked the valley below, offering the first glimpses of the magnificent Hudson that flows past our city. From City Terrace, another smaller set of shorter steps led upward again through a gate of beautiful potted plants in urns to a great lawn that ran from the observatory. You've seen a lot of these landmarks in the slide presentations a little while ago, down to the pergola. The grass was the best place to roll downhill for a child like me, laughing all the way, and then get up with the sight of flower beds spinning around in my field of vision. The observatory building at the top of the park was the popular destination. Tourists climbed up its steps to look downriver at the steamboats that had carried them to Newburgh for the day and chart their walk back down through the town to the docks. Clubs and church groups brought picnics there to enjoy a day of fresh air. That upper park, Du Bois over to Carpenter Avenue, was landscaped for beauty. Flower beds of every shape and species bloomed in their turn through the seasons. Even the winter snow was gracefully caught on fountains of waving branches. Distinctive pergola on the lower hillside was a happy afterthought. It is built on the foundation of the Smith family homestead. That is the land that was acquired to make the park at first. That turn of the 19th century house was incorporated by Olmsted and Vaux to be the superintendent's residence. There's our theme of who takes care. There was a live-in superintendent. In 1908, however, we had a bad cholera epidemic. Newburgh's health commissioners evicted the superintendent and his family temporarily and made the house into a contagion hospital. Months later, the cholera passed, but they were not medically apt as we are. They were still afraid of disease, and they ordered the house burned down. Local architect Frank Estabrook volunteered to reimagine the space, and he built a garden structure incorporating the old foundation. So many holiday, graduation, and wedding pictures were taken there during the 20th century. We could compile probably an album of 1 million Newburghers who stood in that pergola. But the concrete structure needed maintenance over the years, maintenance it didn't get. The lower western half of the park, Carpenter Avenue over to Robinson Avenue, was equally scenic, but centered on a small pond, the one you heard referred to as the potential reservoir for an area of Newburgh. The pond was first called the Pollywog Pond, thus its name the Polly through current generations. And the area on the western park also soon included a bandstand, one wooden one, and then ultimately a stone one, and a shelter house, a 20th century addition where people could gather, get out of the rain for one thing, get to the bathroom for another, but a place for gathering. Local bands took turns in the 40s and 50s giving concerts on Wednesday evenings. The hillsides were filled with literally hundreds of benches, a feature that Downing Park has lost. There were benches put everywhere, the big, heavy iron frame and wooden slatted benches. I rode around the Poly back in the early 80s, helping pull those out where they had been drowned after the park was neglected. Folks gathered on those benches to listen to the bands. So did scores of families from their windows in surrounding neighborhoods. That's the reason it's a central park. It was meant to draw people in from all quarters of Newburgh. The third section of Downing Park was planned, but the City Council never came to an agreement to fund its development. It was to be built on the block from Robinson Avenue over to Townsend Avenue, and it was to be the active versus the passive park. It was to have a playground and playing fields. As designed, the park worked well. Olmsted and Vaux understood how to guide nature so features would shine. They used natural springs that were in the hillside. You can look back at old Newburgh maps and find there was a starch factory below the Smith farm. There were all kinds of things that once actively worked on that land because of waterways, little waterways. They kept a fresh flow of pond water, therefore, in the way that they designed the Poly. And it glistened, it ran clear. It also seeped through a little waterway that went to a reflecting pool in front of the bandstand, which was not only scenic, you can still see it, it's dry, but it amplified the sound of music that was performed on that little terrace. Downing Park was a big operation within the city's administrative structure. It was run by the City Parks Department, a department of 14 employees. They worked mostly in Downing, but in some of our smaller parks. It was downsized and then closed during the hard budget times of the 1970s. A staff member always managed the shelter house year-round. An auxiliary police officer was assigned to patrol the park each day, and indeed, he kept us kids in line. Our middle sibling, my brother, was blind. Close your own eyes and imagine what a big, lush park meant to him. And surely there are others right now who hope to come out of their apartments and have such delight. We would walk Bob along the Downing Park paths and listen for birds and duck and geese calls. The gardeners let us pick flowers so that he could feel them and even taste them and smell them. We would touch the bark of each tree to identify it and then measure its circumference. He could ride a tricycle that we guided with a strap along the winding paths so he felt a real sense of freedom. As we wandered along those park paths, we encountered folks everywhere. That's where all the benches were there ready to accept everybody who came. There were old men taking a breath of fresh air, enjoying the passers-by and starting up conversation, bird watchers, parents and babies, children like me dashing about and climbing Stagecoach Rock. That's what my neighbors called it. You saw it in the slideshow. There was a big rock with a man sitting up top. But it looked like a stagecoach to we kids who grew up in the days of Western movies. You could climb up the steps on one side that were naturally put there by the glacier, and then you sat on the top where there was a foothold like you were riding a buckboard, and we would ride along with the trucks going down 9W. Photographers came to capture the beauty of the park on film. Out-of-towners reveled at what we had created in our small central city. Newburgh did right when it listened to citizen lobbyists who told our leaders that our residents deserved a park. You are all the new citizen lobbyists. It was good for our physical and our mental health. We have always been a city with a majority population of renters. People don't always believe that. They try to skew that the other way. We have always been a city of renters. And renters need places to stretch and walk and breathe and congregate, and we still do. The lobbying for the park was led by several collaborators you've heard about in the other room, but Carolyn Downing was a very strong voice among them. She contacted her husband Andrew's longtime proteges, she was the spark there, and asked them for design help. It became their last collaboration after a celebrated career together and apart. They made it their gift to their mentor and the town where they started their careers. Their sons completed the design and the oversight. Mr. Downing, Calvert's son, for example, designed that observatory. Downing, sadly, has become a place name in most minds, and with each generation it fades in importance. Younger folks haven't easily connected to the fact that it is a Newburgh bragging right that A.J. and Charles Downing were the first in their young field of landscape architecture. Newburgh was a center of innovative horticulture and hybridization that Americans coast to coast looked to for ideas. But NFA West, the Environmental Justice Fellows, and others are digging in and starting to do wonderful things again. So let the lobbying continue.
Can you hear me? Is it on? Yep. All right. Downing Park has followed the highs and lows of the city. In the 1980s, basically, the park was abandoned by the city. That's hard to believe for me. I wasn't aware of all of this. I came late in some ways to Newburgh. The residents used to meet. The city actually didn't cut the grass in the park. That's how bad it got. Residents would meet with lawnmowers to cut parts of the park. The Downing Park Planning Committee, which was the first group of residents, worked very hard and got grants, and during those years when the city wasn't paying much attention, they rebuilt the shelter house, they dredged the poly, and they removed overgrown plantings to make the park safer. Now, this was very hard when they took out a lot of these plantings, because these were, in some cases, still original plantings or very close. But they had to do this because of the problem of muggings, all right? They called it the Downing Park Planning Committee because at that time, there were almost no events. People were afraid to go into the park. I lived here in those years, but I didn't even realize fully that there was a park there. I just would drive by it. All right, that's how terrible it was, all right? So this group organized Downing Days. They would have one day in the fall, and they would try to bring the community back into the park. This eventually led to lots of other events with different groups as the park was sort of restored and with the help of the city. We always had an Easter egg hunt. We had a holiday, Halloween parade and party. There were other groups that came in as well. Tuskegee Airmen used to come. We are Newburgh backpack giveaways. We have affinity health fairs, gospel music. There were a lot of different things that went on in the park at various times. Now, for a number of years, the city did provide a part-time park executive. Today, we are all volunteers, which makes it extremely difficult to get things done. It really is with just volunteers. And once upon a time, there was money for concerts. We don't have any money for concerts anymore. which is why it's very difficult for us to have concerts in the park. We changed the name very recently to the Downing Park Conservancy because we feel this reflects better our mission, which is to restore and to beautify the park. COVID also caused a lot of problems for, as we know, everything in this country. But parks, in some cases, suffered very much because, or they didn't suffer at all because that was one place people could go in some cases. Groups are coming back to have events in the park. And thank you for letting me know about the name of that rock. I always refer to it as the Big Boulder, and I would much prefer to call it Stagecoach Rock.
That's our name from my kids' generation.
Okay, I like it though. I like it. We'll see what we can do.
Climb up those little back steps on the east side, and when you get to the top, just sit down and you'll find that the buckboard footrest is right there for you.
This is wonderful. Okay, I'm going to just talk quickly about challenges and opportunities. I'm starting off with the challenges, the negative, and we'll end up with the higher stuff. All right, there has been, it's always been a little bit of communication problems between our group and the city. We are not part of the city, we are an independent group, but sometimes the city forgets that. There's a serious problem in many parks with vagrancy. All right, I have been working very, very hard on this one lately. And vandalism, all right? If you come on the park tour, you're going to see the pergola. We did not paint it again. We considered trying to repaint it just for this event, but we felt in some ways it's fair for you to see what it's like. We have repainted the pergola, I'm not sure how many times. Tony might be able to tell us, but anyway, it's been many times repainted. All right, we have a problem with the fact that the shelter house now, which is in great disrepair, we have no heating, we have no air conditioning, there's problems with the roof, and all sorts of other problems. The city closed it to the public in March, and we were promised that they would do all this work by early spring. They haven't touched it yet. We know that there are a lot of things they need to do here, but this is a bit of a problem for us. We have e-scooters and e-bikes tearing up the turf. Again, this is not new maybe to our park, but this is something we're trying to figure out what to do. We don't really want the police stopping or chasing these people, but we have to figure out some way of not tearing up the turf and not scaring kids and dogs. We have trouble with our wildlife here too, a little bit. Geese have sometimes taken over the park. We used to have lots of swans, but we don't really have swans now. We have a lot of ducks. We have even wood ducks, but we have too many geese. And we have too many woodchucks. That's another problem we have on one side of the park. The other side is not so bad, but the part up by the pergola, which has been less populated, shall we say, by people, is very populated by woodchucks. We also have some trouble attracting volunteers that can stay with us for a long period of time. We have people who come in and they're with us for a while, but they don't stay. We need to find some ways, you may have some great ideas for us, to hold on to our volunteers, all right? And some opportunities, all right. Olmsted, I've got to thank Olmsted. He has, in his own way, helped revive the park. For the 200th birthday of the park, we were reconnected with the Orange and Dutchess Garden Club. They had done some work in the park about 20 years ago, but they came to us and said, hey, we've got to do some great event in the park. We had a great event in the park in April of 2022. And Dee Dee even spoke, all right? That was, we had a great turnout, it was wonderful, and it started to revitalize the park, all right? So the Dutchess and the Orange and Dutchess Garden Club has helped us with grants, ideas, and contagious enthusiasm. I cannot thank them enough, all right? They have also... They have also helped us reconnect with some of the schools. As some of us retired from the schools, it was harder for us to maintain contacts with the people in the schools. So they have been very helpful in that, connecting us with San Miguel Academy and NFA West. They have helped us with planting trees and refreshing the gardens, especially along 3rd Street. And they've also connected us with some of the local people who care about the park, but we somehow just did not have a connection with. And I'm speaking of Lynn Warren Landscaping, Alex and the tree system there, Devitt's, and so many other things. We are indebted to them. Also, I want to say a shout out to the Conservation Advisory Committee here in Newburgh, which is part of the city. All right, they've helped us get a number of trees, and the Davy Tree Survey that they were able to finance has been very important to wake up the city to the importance of removing dangerous trees. For years, we had contacted the city and nothing was happening, but it was also, they were shorthanded, there were other things that needed to be done. But since we've had that survey, a lot of things have changed. All right, also I wanted to thank the Historical Society has also brought lots of people back into the park with house tours. We've been on their house tour when the house was open. And the croquet tournaments, we're gonna be having another one coming up next year. All right, Habitat for Humanity. This is an amazing opportunity here in Newburgh. They've been going for 25 years. They have restored or built over 100 houses. 3 of them are on 3rd Street. If you're on the bus tour, you'll see them. If you aren't on the bus tour, at some point, drive by on 3rd Street and look for them. You'll see them. And this is important for changing a whole block, and the block can have an effect on the park. Also, the Department of Public Works, all right, although sometimes I seem to criticize them, they have been understaffed. But this year they have done outstanding work. And there is better trash collection and picking up brush. And they have been removing trees, as I said before, and they are even removing stumps. This at one point became a major issue. We had 40 stumps sitting in the park, all right? Okay, so that's really what I want to tell you about the park, and I'm hoping you're going to come on the tours, whether you walk on your own or whether you walk with us. So. So now it's up to you, Kathy.
Ruh-roh. Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm honored to be here, and I really appreciate the opportunity, and I want to thank Downing Park Conservancy and the Olmsted Network and everyone else who has been part of putting this great event together. How many folks here are from the city of Newburgh, live in the city of Newburgh? Show of hands. Ooh, that's good. That's more than I thought. How many live in New York but not in Newburgh? Oh my goodness. And how many people are here in the city of Newburgh for the very first time in their lives? Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, welcome to Newburgh. We're very pleased to have you here. Glad that you are participating both in this national conference and in this very local tour in the afternoon. And I'm here to tell you just a little bit about the Greater Newburgh Parks Conservancy, and then introduce you to 3 of our Environmental Justice Fellows, as well as our Environmental Justice Fellowship Program Manager. So the Conservancy has been around for 5 years, a little over 5 years. We have been 100% volunteer for 5 years. This April, we had our first part-time paid person who you'll hear from in a little bit. That's Elizabeth Balachova. Our work is centered in environmental justice, and we work very hard to amplify existing green space efforts. There's a lot going on in this city, and part of what is needed is communication and coordination and as much as possible, more collaboration and synergy among the many groups that are involved in some way, shape, or form with green space in and around the city of Newburgh. So before the Conservancy was even established as a 501c3 organization, there were 5, 6, 7 years of stakeholder committee meetings on a monthly basis, and those continue with a mailing list of about, email list of about 25 organizations, and any given month, 12, 15 show up to share information and increasingly plan together, work together, coordinate community events. We're starting with just non-competition in terms of our big days, which is a huge thing, and then really looking at how can we use each big community event to provide a platform for folks to have a sense of the full spectrum of what's going on in the city of Newburgh in terms of parks and green space. So we work also at the Conservancy to really link nature and neighbors, and to look at the full spectrum of parks here in the city, depending on your definition and depending on who you're talking to. There are upwards of 30 parks in the city of Newburgh, including pocket parks, not parking parks. Sorry about that. We don't want that. Pay paradise, put up a park. No. So we have a lot of parks. Not all of them are accessible. Not all of them are maintained. And so a big part of our mission is also making sure that every single Newburgher has within a 10-minute, easy 10-minute walk access to safe, healthy green space, and that's a pretty tall order. So we're just starting on that mission. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. We have done a lot of work in recent years on trees. I'll talk about the flip side of the tree inventory that Karen talked about. In 2015, a tree inventory and community forest plan was developed. And it shows still, although it's going to be updated soon, that we have about 3,600 live public trees and about 3,700 missing trees. That's just dead trees, tree stumps, empty areas where there used to be trees. That does not even include the neighborhoods and blocks that never had trees to begin with and need them as we face increasing extreme heat events, increasing storms, increasing water, all of those things. So we have a very tall order in terms of tree canopy and urban forestry in our city. And like many old cities, our streetscapes and our hardscape infrastructure does not necessarily lend itself to tree planting or tree health. We did a survey of a couple of illustrative streets in the city of Newburgh and found that 90% of the tree pits and tree lawns were too small to meet the city code of 4-foot by 5-foot tree pit, which a lot of foresters will say that's way too small to begin with. We have blocks where there is no curb. There is no tree lawn. It's been paved over. People park on it. We have tree lawns just a couple blocks away that are 17 inches. And so we're looking at what can we do with those places before, while we're waiting for entire streetscapes to be re-engineered. We want to keep those open. We want to keep that soil-absorbing stormwater. We want to keep it beautiful or make it beautiful. So we're looking at pollinator plots, but there's this interesting conundrum of how to get enough trees in the city. So we've been taking a multi-pronged approach to it. So working with the Conservation Advisory Council and the city DPW in terms of street trees and trying to work with the environmental justice fellows whose job is really to interact with the community and help them understand how critical tree canopy is, so that when the city does plant trees, they're planted where people really want them and will help to take care of them, or at least won't destroy them, which is a major consideration. So I want to just say a little bit more about the trees. I know that it's not the primary focus of the parks, but making sure that we are able to plant what is being called large structured climate adaptive trees is something that we've been turning our attention to. So in a city streetscape, it's often the case where you've got overhead wires, you've got small plots, et cetera, et cetera. So there are lots of trees planted on the small list, right? Crab apples, Japanese lilacs, things that A, won't live very long, and B, don't give all of the environmental services that are so critical as we face climate change. And so looking at trees that are both going to get very large and are adapted to the heat and the humidity and the water that's coming is something that we're looking at. So looking at, these fellows have had a chance to take care of some bald cypresses. They'll probably live 100, 200 years. We've planted a couple of dawn redwoods. We're planting sycamores, pin oaks, things that will grow very fast and live very long, but not in the streetscape. We're planting them instead of 6 inches off the curb, we're trying to plant them 6 feet off the curb on public and private land that will shade those impervious public spaces. So that's one way we're getting around the streetscape conundrum. Enough about trees. Although you'll hear more, I hope, from the fellows. There's never enough about trees. We all need our treedom, right? So I really want to talk about a central program that we've been working on now for 4 years, and I want to do a shout out again to the Conservation Advisory Council and to the city of Newburgh. I'm sorry that the mayor is no longer here, but they have been very supportive of the Environmental Justice Fellowship that is now in its 4th year. We created the fellowship together with CAC and Outdoor Promise with a grant from the Arbor Day Foundation, who in a rare moment, I won't say rare, in an enlightened moment of understanding and forward thinking allowed us to use the bulk of a grant not to purchase trees and to plant trees, but to create this program to develop and work with young people of color in the city of Newburgh to understand what some of the issues are, to engage with their own community, and to perhaps broaden their horizons in terms of what's possible in the future, whether it's a career path or whether it's a lifelong love of trees and parks and green space. And so we're very excited about that. Sarah, you talked about expanding the inputs, and that's really what the role is of the Environmental Justice Fellows. It's all about community interaction and listening to and working with community and not waltzing into communities and saying, you need more trees, or you need a park here. It's really about listening and hearing, and there are lots of concerns that come up, and there are lots of, someone, who was saying, who doesn't love a tree, right? There are a lot of people who, because they are liable for the damage a tree might do if it heaves the sidewalk or if it lands on a car, do not want a tree. And so helping to educate people that this is not green gentrification, that this is not white people moving into their community and saying you need more trees so it'll raise your property value so we can displace you. Thank you. So the fellows really learn about these issues and then take them to the community and talk with them. And so I want to turn it over so you can actually meet our Environmental Justice Fellowship Program Manager and the 3 fellows that we have with us today. Peter, can I take a microphone down, or do you have one there that they can use? Okay, excellent. This one will reach? Excellent, thank you so much. So we'll start with Elizabeth Balachova, who is an amazing, wonderful woman from the city of Newburgh and runs the fellowship program.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Great to have you all here, and happy that the Environmental Justice Fellows were invited to this event. I will say that this program has truly opened my eyes to the environmental injustices that Newburgh has faced I had the honor of meeting last year's cohort and attending the events and trainings and plantings that they had put together, where I really learned about the history of Newburgh, such as urban renewal, and from more recent events, such as the water reservoir being polluted by Stewart National Air Base, right? And so a main goal of mine is to make sure that our community and our fellows are aware of these injustices and share that information. And of course, on top of that, as Kathy has mentioned, spreading awareness to every single Newburgh resident about the green spaces that are near them, improving them, and hopefully creating even more accessible green spaces. And so in honor of bringing awareness to people, something that really stood out to me by Sarah's keynote speech was that Olmsted visited many African burial grounds. And so a lot of people actually don't know that Newburgh had recently discovered back in 2008 what is referred to as the colored burial ground, where they were doing construction right up on Broadway and Robinson, what was the schoolhouse and now the courthouse, had discovered these buried bodies. And so we're now bringing attention to these people that are unnamed. Sounds like a lot, it's not well-known information, so that's why we're here to bring awareness to that. And it's only a few blocks away from Downing Park, actually. And I know there's a lot of people where their goal is to have a plaque at Downing Park to bring memory to these folks. And now kind of learning what I learned today, I think that's something Olmsted would actually approve of. So with that said, as a program manager, I'm really excited to be working with the fellows. It's been so great to see these opportunities that they have for them. You know, when I was their age, there weren't as many opportunities, so I'm really excited for their future and for you all to get to know them as well. So I'm going to bring Stephen up to introduce himself.
Wow, guys, that was a great introduction from Elizabeth, my manager. This is like my first big, presentation here. So if I stumbled or freeze a little bit, hopefully you guys understand. So hello, again, good afternoon. I'm Steven Gonzalez, and before I start, I want to mention that all three of us just graduated from NFA just recently. So I just wanted to mention that because you've briefly met a few other people who were from a high school perspective, and we are recently graduates. So I really wanted to bring that conversation that the youth are also in this environmental field, trying to help and support everybody here. And so I joined the Environmental Justice Fellowship to be with and give back to my community. I was born and raised here, and I really enjoy the cityscape here. And growing up, I didn't realize how many small pocket parks or in any other type of park here that we were able to access. Parks like the Washington headquarters, we weren't able to access that park, or I didn't know due to like language barriers, because I'm part of a Latino family. And so most of our community here in the city of Newburgh is primarily Hispanic folks. And so there's a language barrier when it comes to speaking in English and Spanish, and there's so many areas here in Newburgh where the language barrier is not there. And so with the fellowship, I'm able to communicate that with canvassing and doing a whole bunch of public events with the Environmental Justice Fellowships. And also throughout the fellowship, I've learned and advocated just to love the trees. The trees support us, and we got to take care of the trees. I know you mentioned there's always a talk with more trees, but it really is an eye-opening, seeing these trees out in the wild and just being with them calms me whenever I walk to school. Also, I just want to mention, I really enjoyed Sarah's keynote because of Olmsted in the Central Park. Recently, I'm attending Cooper Union, Lower East Side Manhattan, and so we went to the Metropolitan Museum, and they had a reimagine of Seneca Village and the people who were displaced there. And so it's kind of like everything connects, and I'm an aspiring artist, and so I wish to bring my art and connect with the environment and hopefully bring that awareness. And so thank you for having me. And now I'm going to introduce Ashley, another environmentalist fellowship.
So, hello, I hope everyone's having a good time today. My name is Ashley Martinez. I am 18 years old, and I was born and raised in the city of Newburgh. The fellowship has opened my eyes to so many things that are very important here, like the environmental stewardship and the impact of community-driven projects and enhancing the quality of life and promoting sustainability in Newburgh. For example, early on joining the fellowship, some of the projects we have done was a Planning Power Newburgh event, which was at Ward Brothers, and we had about 100 volunteers show up and 2,100 like individual plant plugs. So there was a lot that was planted there and so many people showed up. So it was amazing to be a part of that. There was so many people that came from different ages to like coming from different communities, just coming to help and support. So I really was like so happy to be there and like at that moment and kind of experience all of that. But yeah, I mean, I feel like this program has really helped me a lot. I'm not very good at public speaking and it's kind of helping me get out there more. So yeah, I think most importantly, this fellowship encourages the youth to take action and to protect and improve the environment, and currently and in the future for future generations. Yeah. Next up is Michelle.
Oh, well, that's so cool. Hi, my name is Michelle, and the reason why I really love the fellowship is that, is that it's just given me a chance to like be really in the community. Like I live by Mount St. Mary, so it's like sort of like on the border, like going to town Newburgh and going to the city. But my parents usually never let me go into the city part. So like joining the fellowship, like I've gotten to know like more like Liberty Street and like the Washington headquarters that you were talking about. I didn't know we could just go in there. So when we had like an event there, we were talking to people. I actually, that was the first time I went in there when we went there. And so I'm just, really happy to be part of the fellowship. It's given me a lot of leadership opportunities too, because we have like pillars, and like one of my pillars is the the educational materials. And so what Elizabeth was talking about, I'm doing what is it called? Oh, a pamphlet on the injustices in Newburgh. So I'm talking about the urban renewal, the PFAS in the water, the lead pipes. There's some more, but oh, the asthma. The asthma here is pretty high. So yeah, we're just doing a lot of articles on that, reading that. What else have we been doing? Oh, the door knocking. That's fun, talking to those people, like them, like, acting like they're all busy, not wanting to talk to us. Like, okay, but like, I really like that we're like sort of like a family and stuff, After that happens, we regroup, we talk about it, and then we keep going. But that's it.
I just want to thank the Downing Park Conservancy for making it possible for the fellows to be here and to spend the whole day with all of you. It was a really generous offer, and we appreciate it deeply. Thank you so much.
Before we all depart, I just want to say thank you. I want to say a big shout out to the Environmental Justice Fellows. I think in many respects, Frederick Law Olmsted was the first Environmental Justice Fellow because he was dealing with injustices in cities. He was dealing with disease. He was dealing with a lack of sanitation. He was dealing with private parks which were accessible only to the wealthy. And so it was he who said, we need to have places where everyone can go and be seen together, to bring together community and to have public health. And so I hope you will think of yourselves in that spirit as Olmsted Environmental Justice Fellows. And I want to just say thank you to all of our speakers. The Olmsted, yeah, let's just give them a hand. We have a new name, Olmsted Network. It's a relatively new name, and there's a reason for it. We want to bring people together in communities who support parks and open spaces. And so one of our goals today was to bring these folks together because, as we understand it, they haven't always worked together. They may be able to work more together. That's very much our goal because we see these as networking opportunities where we can get together as partners. Conservancies, historical societies, Archtober, garden clubs, Newburgh Brew Company is even a partner, landscape architects and others, so that we can all come together and empower each other to help renew and restore these great spaces. Back in the 1980s, we helped put together an extensive master plan, 8 reports that were done. And I want to make certain you all have those because these were put together looking at the history of the park, and we want to share that with you because I'm sure it is every bit as relevant today. I also urge you all to go to our website, olmsted.org. You will find on the Olmsted Trail, Downing Park. So it is part of a growing national trail that will introduce people to fantastic Olmsted assets across the country. I also want to say that we are delighted to be here for this conference. As you've heard, it's not our first time. We look at these not as transactional opportunities, but as long-term. We were in Milwaukee last year for our conference, and we remain extremely involved there, where we are seeking historic designation, where we have gotten the Olmsted Parks on Visit Milwaukee's website, where we are busy campaigning to help bring the park together because it was split, much as Downing Park was, by a roadway that divided neighborhoods and caused division. So we look forward to continuing our engagement here in Newburgh and with those involved with Downing Park because this is such an essential piece of your history and part of your public health infrastructure. And so with that, I just want to say again, thank you to all of you, and thank you to our young people, because indeed, that is also why we exist, to create and support these groups that will then support these great parks for the next generation. So thank you so much.